But we're going to talk about dustification. As we talked about before, this is turning to dust as it falls. People often see these squirts ahead of the collapse wave. But what was that? If it's bombs, you'd see a flash and you see a whole lot more of them. But if you have the whole building turning to dust as it comes apart, what about the water tanks that are distributed throughout the building? They're going to get weaker and weaker as they're dissolving until they suddenly give way. And I'm tending to believe that might indeed be what that is. We don't know. But if you got that whole building down on the ground in like 8 seconds, well, let's say 9.5 seconds just to give it some extra, it would have to be squirting out here at the base at a minimum of Mach 1.5. The air from the middle to get to the outside is like Mach 2.5. For sure, all of the adjacent buildings should look like they were machine gun fired. That's a lot of stuff to squirt out of the way. And that's assuming the building took, 9.5 seconds to come to the ground. So to just have this couple little puffs, something's not right there too. Now people who say, okay, they claim they heard explosions. And so therefore it must be bombs in the building. They're starting with assuming what did it, and then going back to assuming what problem they're solving, instead of determining first what happened. Well, if you recall, blasting zone ahead, turn off cell phones and two-way radios just in case it triggers something. How are you going to get everyone to unknowingly turn off all their cell phones in southern Manhattan for weeks ahead while they prepare the site? But there were sounds of explosions. Bombs go boom, but not everything that goes boom is a bomb. Think of putting an egg in your microwave oven. Turns out there's a lot of folks who talked about these Scott packs exploding at ground level, sitting on the fire trucks. There's a lot of testimony here, we don't need to go over it, but there's various firefighters who talked about hearing these Scott tanks exploding. Now this is slow motion of Tower 1 coming apart. And you notice this, there'll be some column that starts falling down this corner. I think it's in here. And we're going to follow it down and watch how it just turns to dust completely. And as well as these other things. Here it is. Okay, it's got the dust trailing behind it. This is a solid piece. It's like ice cream melting. It's going away. And if you focus on various other parts, you'll see the same thing. There's no sound with this. This is a high-speed version of it. You can see that piece again. And these big chunks over here. So you see it's turning to dust as it comes down. And we're going to go look down on the ground right next to where this was coming down. This is the Verizon building here. Whoops, right here. And we're going to look at the corner right below there. That's the Verizon building right there. This is that intersection where that material was falling. Right after everything's settled, these people who were hiding come out of their hiding places. And they're probably in awe. There's, no building here. You can see sky. Looking at the body language, the guy with his hands on his hips, arms folded, arms that side, they're probably in total amazement and shock and just bewildered. I call this picture the Twilight Zone because they probably felt like they just walked into the Twilight Zone. A bunch of cars went into spontaneous combustion, apparent spontaneous combustion up here with a sea of unburned paper in between. And here's that toasted car lot. But we're going to look at various directions of watching this dustification. There's a cluster of core columns that remains here. Watch what happens to them. They just faint. I believe that's the upper part of where those firefighters survived in Stairwell B. Those are core columns. This is another one. See how it peels away like a banana? And you see this clear air around it. Some folks like to say dust settled on it. Well, dust can't settle on something like that fast, without seeing it. And there's from across the river, you can see those two. And then there's a sequence from the northern view. And my detractors like to say, oh, it fell over. And because the dust was so fine, it hung in the air. Well, if the dust is so fine it hung in the air, how could it be settled instantly on these vertical columns? We saw how it was peeled away like a banana. But it comes a point where it's no longer a crisp boundary and just turns to dust. I call it dustification. I mean, where have we seen it before? Here goes one more round. But you're told to see a collapse, so you tune that out. You can see all of this just frothing up into dust, that part. And it's also blowing downward. Very clean edges. So it isn't like dust was settling on it. And another part of it, this is further up than this image, because this is coming down close to this building. But notice there's some chunks that go missing. And notice the dust kind of squirting out the ends of those pieces. You can see it trailing. So the reason why you didn't hear a thud when it hit. Lather is a term I use when it looked like another unique behavior pattern, but I think lather is just the part doing the same thing that this is doing, but doing it in place. And this video is of Building 7, the north face, but notice it's one face and one face only that has this lather pouring out of it.
No, go low to the corner.
Notice it's spiraling around. And if it was smoke from a fire and it really needed to get out, why isn't it coming out these windows? If there's a traffic jam, why does it take the path of least resistance? The wind that day was 7 or 8 miles an hour.
No, go low to the corner.
Now we're going to look at dust rollout and fuzzballs. This wall of dust is pouring down the street. It was chasing people, and it overtook them. Didn't cook them. Just left them covered with dust. I like these abrupt lines. Like you can see where this other fellow's tie was tucked in there. He was just covered. He didn't get cooked. The dust went a certain distance and then went up. Another bizarre thing. Again, it's important just to take in all of the data, and it starts telling you the story of what happened. Let the evidence tell you the story instead of forcing it to go a particular direction. And I wouldn't have seen this before, that just all particular distance then goes up. There's a video filmed by Bob and Bree, who had an apartment up here. Bless them for saving this video and then sharing it with the world. This is an image from there, and the dust doesn't quite touch their window and then goes up.
Is the air conditioner turned off in the room? Good thinking. And the windows closed in the bedroom?
Near the area are an absolute crazy situation. The entire top of the building just collapsed.
The entire building just collapsed. Building just collapsed.
We're going to leave because...
See, it just starts shooting up. It doesn't touch the window.
This is a devastating
It doesn't go past here.
We do not know at this point the extent of injuries or casualties, how many people were in these buildings. Trying trying to get out. We've seen some gut wrenching.
Oh, people are running away. They're running away.
Hanging out of windows.
What are they going to do?
Green
You guys
grass.
gotta run away.
You see the obvious.
That grass stayed green the whole time.
All right, let's go to ABC News right now.
I think it's going to be blown away from us. No, it's the wind is being blown away.
Horrific, incredible, not to be believed.
It just came that particular distance, but it went up.
Over just a few minutes ago, within the last minute actually, the second Twin Tower collapsed. Just to recap, if you're just joining us, around 8:42 Eastern Time this morning here in New York City, a plane crashed into the right Twin Tower of the World Trade Center. About 2
Isn't it amazing it goes up? Now, controlled demolition, the dust doesn't really go above the highest point of the building, the original building. But this went up and blocked out all the sunlight for a few minutes. And it went up and continued going up. And continued going up for months and years. Wet tire tracks, they wet it down, they're misting it from up here. But what's this? Wet dirt? All right, fuzzballs. Notice how clear the air is from here on up, but down at the bottom is a thick haze. And you'll notice from the time on the clock that it's only 15 minutes after the South Tower went away. And this is 15 minutes before the North Tower went away. How could that fine of dust have landed in that short of time? It's fallen out of the air because it's clear. And there's several other pictures that indicate this, that it was coarse dust that landed and then became fine dust and began rising up like it kept breaking down.